We just went under contract with the seller to buy their place, shot everything over to title. They came back and said, oops, I accidentally signed another contract with somebody else. Today's video, I want to talk to you about what you do in this situation and how we still got paid. Let's dive right in. So in a previous video, we talked about NOIs, which stands for Notice of Interest, or like Memorandum of Contracts. What these devices basically do is they allow you to cloud title by stating that you have an equitable interest in this property that you kind of like got through the signed purchase and sale agreement. Now, in some of these markets, it's like you file it and it's there forever. In other markets, it's like you have to refile it every 30, 60, 90 days. In some markets, they don't really do them. But if you're in a market that has them, I highly, highly recommend it. So effectively what happens is if somebody goes under contract with us, we file this document out county where if they try to sell the property to somebody else, it pops up and says, hey, there's a purchase and sale agreement out here that you have to resolve before you can close this particular transaction. Now, I didn't do a YouTube video on this because I've got an NDA and I can't really share all of the details, but we had one of these in the past where we had one with a seller. He sold the place to somebody else and we ended up finding out about it after the fact and we were able to sue and we got paid because, well, they shouldn't have done that. Typically, though, it doesn't get to the part where like somebody else is able to buy the house because this document kind of stops it. So in this particular instance, we're under contract to buy kind of like a C-class place. Our plan was to flip it. And the seller came back and was like, oh, I accidentally signed with somebody else as well. Now, in my experience, they never accidentally sign with somebody else for less money. It always just happens to be that they accidentally sold the house to two people and the other person happens to have paid more than you. Now, what we've seen in the market lately, it's been harder than in the past to get deals. Don't get me wrong, we're still doing super, super well. But where I think we're going is it might get a little bit easier to find deals, but a little bit harder to find people to buy them if you're not taking them down yourself. So the reason I wanted to put this video out is like sketchy people are going to be sketchy. Anytime you're in something like real estate where you can make money, it's kind of just like attracts people that are potentially bad actors. So on this particular deal, we went under contract, sent it over to title. He came back and was like, oops, I signed with somebody else for, $5,000 more or whatever. It was at title. They came back and actually hit us up and they said, hey, you need to release this notice of interest so we can close this property, which is typically like, hey, we're going to get paid, right? One thing to note with NOIs, if you file one on somebody's property, cloud title where they can't sell it, and then you pull out of the deal, you'd better pull that NOI off. Otherwise, you can actually get yourself in some trouble for like illegally or fraudulently clouding their title because you failed to perform. Typically in our instance, it's not us failing to perform, it's the seller, and this kind of covers our rear, so to fact, for the work that we did. So normally what we do with these, anytime they say, hey, I sold to somebody else, or I signed a contract with somebody else as well, we say, awesome, when and who, and send me a copy of the contract. If you're lucky, most investors now, realtors now, are using electronic contracts that will like document the IP, the time, date stamp, all of that. We've had deals in the past where somebody said, oh yeah, I sold to somebody else. And on the date field, they backdated it, but the software showed us the contract was actually signed after ours. So, hey, ours is still in effect, sucks to suck, we're going to close. In this instance, the other buyer had a paper contract. And they said theirs was dated before ours. So for all we know, he signed first with them for more money, doubt it, and then sold to us as well for less money, which would make no sense. But hypothetically, we'll say that that's what happened. So they came to us and they said, look, we need to get this resolved. We're prepared to get attorneys involved. It's a C-class house. It's not one that we were particularly like super excited about. This isn't a 70, 80, 90, $100,000 home run. It's kind of like we're going to make 20, 30, right? So we were like, that's not worth it to us. So what we did was for $5,000, we'll release our contract on this. And they were like, okay, cool, done deal. So we got paid $5,000 last week on this particular property. Now, one thing that I do just kind of want to note about this process, in my experience, if somebody's going to be sketchy enough to get a seller to sign a second contract when a first one's already out there, they're also going to be sketchy enough to like coach them through how to try to get out of your deal. So it's not uncommon for you to have somebody that was like clearly an adult of sound mind call you back and be like, hey, I have dementia and I can't sell you my house and I'm going to stay here forever. Or like we'll often hear, oh, my doctor declared me medically incompetent. Okay, well, there's a certificate for that. Send it over to title and we'll release the contract. So just be aware, like they might be getting coached from somebody that knows the industry as well as you do, which is why it's important to have these documents out there to protect yourself. On this particular one, our typical cost to get a deal with direct mail is like $2,500. So when we include like the cost of overhead, paying staff, maybe we made $1,000, but at least we got something and we're reimbursed for the effort and time we put into that deal. Would I have rather gotten the deal and flipped it? Yeah, absolutely. But I wasn't about to go hire an attorney and rack up thousands of dollars in legal fees to try to make $15,000. I've got better things to do with my time. So typically what we do when we have a seller say, hey, I signed with you and with somebody else, we ask for the details, a copy of the contract, figure out who the buyer is. We also have already started our title work. So we remind them of that, like, hey, this isn't just as simple as like, oh, okay, they can buy the house. It's going to come down to, who went under contract first. We've already got costs out here with title search and things of that nature. Flip side with an NOI, if they come to us and just say, hey, I've decided not to sell the house, which is another way they'll try to like get out of it. My favorite is like, oh, we'll just cancel the contract. Like, well, that's actually not how this works. In that instance, if they're an absentee owner, we tell them, hey, look, we've got a legally binding contract you signed. I'm going to be at title with your money like you agreed to on this date. You've got to show up. If they are an owner occupant, I'm never going to force somebody out of their house if they change their mind. So we just tell them, hey, that's totally cool. But by the way, we've got this document out here where you can't sell the house to somebody else. Often then they'll come up and be like, whoa, well, the neighbor said he was going to give me more money or whatever. It's kind of when we get like the true motivation. But it's one of those reasons you kind of want to like just add the NOI or memorandum of contract to your process and use them consistently. So far, year to date, we've made over $20,000 on these on people that have tried to be like sketchy. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. Again, my name is Ryan Dossey. Hopefully you enjoy some of the like in the weeds stuff like this of like what happens when deals go sideways and how to potentially still monetize the time and effort that you've got involved. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe. Talk to you guys next time.